I wasn't expecting anything that day. The mail had been the same every week for months. Bills, junk flyers, supermarket coupons. But then, I saw it. A single white envelope, thicker than the rest, tucked neatly between two catalogs. My name was written in elegant gold lettering. The handwriting was familiar, and yet wrong. When I slid my finger under the flap and pulled the card out, my chest tightened. A glossy wedding invitation. And there it was. The name of the bride. Maya Thompson. Maya, my ex-best friend. I froze on the doorstep, the cool wind wrapping around me like icy fingers. Maya and I hadn't spoken in over 3 years. Not since the fight that ended everything between us. The night she betrayed me. I thought nothing she could ever do would surprise me again. I was wrong. I flipped the card over, hands trembling slightly, and that's when I saw him. The groom. A smiling man in a charcoal gray suit. Broad shoulders. A jawline I'd traced with my fingers 100 times. And those eyes. I knew those eyes. I knew them better than I knew my own reflection. I whispered his name without meaning to. Evan? But the caption beneath the photo read something else entirely. Julian Hart. At first, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. I blinked. I shook my head. I even pulled up an old photo of Evan on my phone, holding it side by side with the invitation. Same smile, same scar on the edge of his jaw, same small dimple that only appeared when he was fighting a laugh. I stumbled into the kitchen, dropping the rest of the mail onto the counter. This had to be some mistake. Evan couldn't be alive. And marrying her. Because Evan was gone. 3 years ago, 5 days before our wedding, he disappeared without a trace. No note, no explanation, just one short text. I can't. That was it. No calls answered, no social media, no sightings, no closure. I mourned him like a death I wasn't allowed to talk about. And now, this? My breath came unevenly as memories clawed their way back. The night Maya came over with wine and tissues, swearing she had no idea why Evan left. The way she held my hand, rubbing circles into my palm as I cried myself hoarse. The way she promised, over and over, that we'd get through this together. And now she was marrying him. Or Julian. Or whatever name he was using now. I sat down heavily, gripping the invitation so tightly the gold lettering started to smudge beneath my fingers. I wanted to scream. I wanted to laugh. I wanted answers. Was it betrayal? Coincidence? Or something darker? I turned the card over again, scanning the details like a detective piecing together a crime scene. Date: 3 weeks from now. Venue: Lake Crest Manor, a luxury estate outside the city. Dress code: formal black tie. And then, in looping cursive at the bottom, I'd love for you to come. Let's start fresh. Start fresh. The words made my skin crawl. I sat there for hours, staring at that smiling photo. I knew I couldn't ignore this. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy hearing stories like this. And while you're here, comment where and when you're watching. I want to know how far this story reaches. Because trust me, this is only the beginning. Next, I'll tell you what I found when I looked closer at Julian Hart, and why that discovery changed everything. I didn't sleep that night, not even a second. I lay in bed with the invitation on the nightstand, the gold lettering glowing faintly under the soft streetlight filtering through the curtains. My eyes kept drifting back to his face. Julian Hart, as the card called him. Julian, but no. Not to me. To me, he was still Evan. By dawn, my thoughts were racing too fast to ignore. I brewed a pot of coffee I didn't drink and opened my laptop. I typed his new name into the search bar like it was a lifeline. Julian Hart, Lake Crest Manor wedding nothing. No personal accounts, no tagged photos, no digital trail. It was like he didn't exist before Maya. That's when the dread began creeping in. People leave footprints online. You can delete pictures, deactivate accounts, start over. But complete erasure? That's almost impossible, unless someone wants to disappear. I opened another tab, and searched for Maya instead. There she was, perfectly curated, as always. Her Instagram glimmered with champagne glasses, rooftop dinners, brand collaborations, and sun-drenched vacation reels. But scrolling back through her timeline, I noticed something strange. 18 months ago, around the time she posted her first picture with Julian, everything before that was gone. Deleted. Like she'd scrubbed her entire past clean. Why would they both do that? I glanced again at the photo of Julian, my fingers gripping the edges so hard the paper bent slightly. The jawline, the dimple, the small scar near his temple from the bike accident in college. It was him. I knew it was him. And yet, my brain refused to believe it. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my old gallery, pulling up pictures of Evan. The comparison was undeniable. Same man, new name, new life, new bride. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number lit up the screen. Unknown. Don't do this. Please, my blood went cold. No greeting, no context, no name. But I knew that tone. Short, direct, controlled. It felt like him. I stared at the screen, frozen, my thumbs hovering above the keyboard, unsure whether to reply or throw the phone across the room. I spent the rest of the day pacing, every memory sharper than glass. Evan proposing under fairy lights on that snowy December night. The way Maya hugged me, squealing louder than I did, swearing she'd be my maid of honor. The bridal fittings, the planning calls, the way we stayed up until 3 a.m., laughing about centerpieces and playlists. And then, that morning, 5 days before the wedding, the single text, the silence after. Now, 3 years later, he wasn't just alive. He was standing beside the girl who once swore she'd die before hurting me. My phone buzzed again. Same number. Unknown. You need to stay away from this. Stay away? From what? From who? From them? The words pounded in my head like an alarm bell. I pulled up the wedding invitation again, reading the lines over and over until they blurred. A date, a time, a place. Lake Crest Manor. 3 weeks from now. I didn't know why or how, but one thing had crystallized inside me like ice. I had to go. Even if it broke me. Even if it destroyed me. Because until I knew the truth, I couldn't breathe. And something told me. This was only the surface of something much, much darker. I didn't realize it then, but the next thing I discovered would flip my entire world upside down, because Julian Hart wasn't just hiding a new name, he was hiding a new life. I didn't mean to open the old box. I'd promised myself years ago that I'd never touch it again. But that night, I couldn't stop myself. I pulled it down from the top shelf of my closet, the faded shoebox where I kept the last pieces of Evan, the invitations, the vendor contracts, the receipts from the florist. And there, at the very bottom, still perfectly folded, was my wedding dress receipt. 1,000 memories came rushing back. 3 years ago, I was standing in that same bedroom, holding the dress against my body, twirling in front of the mirror, while Maya sat cross-legged on the bed, eating strawberries and making jokes about the garter toss. "This is it, Liv," she'd said, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Your happily ever after is happening." She'd taken pictures. She'd cried with me. She'd promised she'd stand right beside me when I walked down the aisle. And 5 days before the wedding, everything shattered. I remember it like it happened yesterday. It was early morning when the text came through. "I can't." 2 words. That was it. I thought it was a joke at first. I called him immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. Over and over again, I called. Nothing. By noon, his number was disconnected. By evening, his apartment was empty. By the next day, his email was gone, his social media erased, and every trace of him vanished. I remember collapsing on my bedroom floor, dress fittings canceled, venue deposit lost, my life rewritten in an instant. And Maya, she was there. She came over that same night, holding my favorite ice cream and a bottle of cheap rosé. "You don't need him," she whispered, pulling me into her arms. "You're better off without him. He doesn't deserve you," I believed her. I let her see me at my weakest, my most broken. I trusted her more than anyone else. And now, looking back, all I could think was, did she already know? Was she already part of this? I shook my head, trying to clear the thoughts, but every detail started cutting deeper. I remembered the night before Evan proposed. We were at Maya's apartment, and she'd insisted on painting my nails because you never know when life surprises you. She knew, I'm certain she knew, which meant she also knew what she was taking from me now. I glanced at the clock, past midnight, and went back to my laptop. I typed his new name again, Julian Hart, but this time I dug deeper. Property records, court filings, business licenses, nothing. It was as though his entire identity had been built out of smoke. And then, I noticed something strange. In one of Maya's tagged engagement photos, a champagne glass caught the light in just the right angle. There, faint but clear, was a tiny wrist tattoo. A black crescent moon. Evan had that tattoo. I remember tracing it with my fingertips on quiet nights. I zoomed in, my pulse pounding in my ears. This wasn't coincidence anymore. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. Unknown. Stop looking, Liv. This time, I replied. Hands shaking. Who is this? No response. I stared at the screen, chest tight, breath shallow. The silence was louder than any answer I could have imagined. I looked back at the shoebox, at the receipts, the invitations, the memories. It all felt heavier now, as though the past itself was holding me down, and that's when I realized something else. In the original wedding planning folder, there was one missing contract. The photographer. I never hired one back then. Evan said his friend would handle it. I'd never even seen the final files. Could that friend have been Maya's photographer now? I didn't know it yet, but chasing that lead would open a door I couldn't close. Because the next discovery, it wouldn't just prove who Julian really was. It would show me just how deep Maya's betrayal went. By the next morning, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to sit here drowning in questions anymore. I needed answers. I grabbed my laptop and coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and dove into a rabbit hole of searching. Julian Hart. Age? Supposedly 31. Occupation? Consultant. Hometown? Private. Private. That one word clung to me like smoke. No LinkedIn, no Facebook, no alumni records from any of the schools Maya bragged about him attending. No wedding registries, no tagged college friends, no childhood photos. It was as though this man had sprung into existence the moment Maya introduced him to the world. And yet, I knew better. I typed his new name alongside keywords from Evan's old life. Julian Hart plus Boston plus finance. Julian Hart plus engineering. Julian Hart plus triathlon results. Nothing. But when I searched the engagement photos again, zooming in frame by frame, something caught my eye. The watermark. It was tiny, hidden in the bottom right corner of one shot. Riverside Studios photography. I called the studio. My voice shook slightly as I asked if they'd shot the Hart-Thompson engagement session. Yes, the receptionist said brightly. Beautiful couple. Private clients. I hesitated, then forced the question out. Did the groom give any instructions about the photos? A pause. Then, almost conspiratorially, she lowered her voice. Yeah, he specifically asked us not to post them anywhere public, said he didn't want anyone from his past life finding him. My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles ached. Past life. I booked a consultation with the photographer, pretending to be a potential client. 2 days later, I walked into the sleek studio, my heart pounding in my ears. I spotted the photographer immediately, a tall man with sandy hair and nervous energy, shuffling prints on a desk. I sat down and leaned forward. This might sound strange, I began softly, but the groom in your engagement shoot, is there anything unusual you remember? He hesitated. Then, with a guilty glance around, he whispered, They told me to crop his wrist in every shot. Said it was for aesthetic reasons, but honestly, it didn't make sense. It was just a tiny tattoo, nothing offensive. just a little crescent moon. I felt my stomach drop. The blood roared in my ears like rushing water. It was him, Evan. There was no denying it now. But why the new name? Why pretend to be someone else? Why Maya? And then a thought crept in, darker than the rest. What if he hadn't just left me? What if someone made him leave me? On my way home, I passed a cafe where Maya and I used to sit for hours, planning my dream wedding. I stopped in front of the window, staring at the table where we once sketched out color palettes and centerpieces. Did she laugh behind my back even then? Did she know she'd eventually sit at her own wedding with the man I loved? I thought I'd hit rock bottom before, the night Evan disappeared. I was wrong. This was lower. This was colder. Back home, I spread everything on the table, the old photos, the receipts, the invitation, my laptop. I needed to connect the dots. And that's when I saw it. In Maya's engagement post, she was wearing a sapphire ring. Not just any sapphire, my sapphire. The heirloom ring my grandmother gave me, the one Evan promised to propose with, the one that vanished the week he disappeared. I stared at the screen, numb. Then I zoomed in closer to make sure. Same intricate filigree, same faint scratch along the band from when I dropped it years ago. She wasn't just marrying him. She was wearing my future on her finger. My phone buzzed on the counter. Same unknown number. Unknown. You need to stop, Liv, for your own sake. But I was already past stopping. The next move I made would change everything, because if Maya thought she'd erased my history, she was about to find out how wrong she was. I couldn't stop staring at the photo. My sapphire ring. On her hand. Evan's tattoo, cropped out like a dirty secret. Every thread I pulled led to the same tangled knot, and my chest tightened with the weight of all of it. That crescent moon on his wrist. Evan got it the summer we went camping in Oregon. I remembered lying on the grass together, staring at the night sky, and laughing when he said, "Let's get something permanent." A reminder that even if life changes, this will stay. And now, here it was. Hidden, erased. Why hide a symbol you once said was forever? I knew I needed to confirm it once and for all, so I decided to go further than I ever had before. The next morning, I called the Riverside Studios photographer back. "Hi, it's Olivia," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I wanted to ask if you still have the raw files from the engagement shoot." A pause. Then a cautious, "Why?" "I'm related to the groom," I lied smoothly, though my throat burned with the words. "I think there's been a misunderstanding, and I just need to confirm something." Another pause. Then he sighed, lowering his voice to a whisper. "Look, I could get in trouble for this, but yes, I still have them. That evening, he sent me a private Dropbox link. I clicked it with shaking hands. Hundreds of photos loaded onto the screen, scrolling endlessly. Maya in a silk dress, smiling like she'd won the world. Julian beside her, sharp suit, hand on her waist. And there it was. In one unedited shot, his cuff had slipped just enough to expose the tattoo completely. That tiny crescent moon. I dropped my face into my hands, laughing bitterly through the tears. "Evan," I whispered into the quiet of my apartment, "it really is you." I thought knowing the truth would bring relief. It didn't. It felt worse. Because if he was alive, if he was happy, if he was with her, that meant he'd chosen this. I called my mom later that night, desperate to hear her voice, to ground myself somehow. "Liv, honey, you sound exhausted," she said gently. "Did you know?" My voice cracked halfway through the question. A pause. "Know what?" she asked cautiously. "That Maya's getting married." "Oh, sweetheart," she sighed softly. "I've known for a few months." Something inside me froze. "You knew?" "She told me not to say anything," Mom explained quickly. "She said she didn't want to upset you." Upset me? Upset me? I hung up before she could say more, my pulse roaring in my ears. I went back to the photos, forcing myself to look at every single frame until my eyes burned. One detail kept nagging at me. A shot of Maya holding a glass of champagne. On her wrist was a delicate gold bracelet, with initials engraved on the tiny charm. E+L. My breath caught. That bracelet was mine. A gift from Evan, our first anniversary. She was wearing it like it was hers. The humiliation washed over me in waves. I felt stripped bare, as if my entire past had been carved out and handed to her. And then, the message came. Same unknown number. Unknown. Stop digging, Liv. You don't understand what's happening. My hands trembled so badly, I almost dropped the phone. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore. This wasn't just betrayal. There was something deeper here, something I couldn't see yet. I typed back before fear could stop me. Who are you? This time the reply came instantly. Someone trying to protect you. Protect me? From what? I stared at those words for a long time, the weight of them pressing against my ribs. Because if I was right, if the man in that photo was truly Evan, then either Maya had lied to me for years, or Evan had. And deep down, a part of me whispered the one possibility I couldn't bear to face. What if they'd lied together? I didn't know it then. But the next discovery wouldn't just break my heart. It would make me question everything I thought I knew about the night Evan disappeared. I didn't go to work the next day. I couldn't. I sat at the kitchen table, the invitation lying between my coffee cup and my trembling hands. The white envelope mocked me, like a silent reminder of everything I'd lost and everything I didn't understand. That bracelet, that ring, that tattoo, every piece of my past was suddenly in her possession. But one thing wouldn't leave my mind. The phone call with Mom last night. She'd known. For months. I drove to her house without thinking, the roads a blur under my tires. When she opened the door, her smile faltered instantly, as though she'd been expecting this confrontation. Liv, she whispered softly. You look pale. Come in. I stepped past her without answering, the air heavy between us. Why didn't you tell me? My voice cracked more than I wanted it to. She didn't ask what I meant. She didn't need to. Mom sat at the edge of the couch, folding her hands in her lap like she was bracing for impact. Maya reached out, she said finally, her voice quiet. She told me about the wedding months ago. I stared at her, waiting for more. She asked me not to tell you. A bitter laugh slipped out of me, sharp and ugly. And you listened to her? Maya? She said she didn't want to hurt you, Mom said, her eyes soft with something that looked like guilt. She said she wanted to explain everything herself, when the time was right. I shook my head, pacing the room as anger rippled through me. When the time was right? I repeated. When she's already wearing my ring? My bracelet? When she's marrying the man who vanished on me? Mom flinched slightly at the venom in my voice, but didn't deny any of it. I leaned against the wall, folding my arms tightly across my chest. Did you know it was him? I asked finally, my voice barely a whisper. Her gaze darted away. That was answer enough. Liv, listen to me, she began softly, reaching for my hand. But I stepped back. How long have you been talking to her? I asked coldly. Mom hesitated, then exhaled slowly. Since last year. I blinked. Last year? She called me out of the blue, Mom explained. Said she wanted to mend things with you. At first, I thought she was trying. But then she started talking about her new relationship. She said she'd found someone who understood her better than anyone ever had. My stomach twisted. She meant Evan. I sank into the armchair, my knees suddenly weak. She used you, I whispered. She used you to keep tabs on me. Mom's eyes brimmed with guilt, and that hurt almost as much as everything else. I'd lost Evan. I'd lost Maya. And now, it felt like I was losing Mom too. As I sat there, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Another message. This time, not from the unknown number. From Maya. Liv, we need to talk, please. I stared at the screen, my hands numb. After everything, she wanted to talk? I almost deleted the message. Almost. But something stopped me. Something deeper than anger, darker than heartbreak. Because if Maya wanted a conversation, that meant she had something to hide. That night, I didn't respond. Instead, I searched again. I typed Julian Hart plus property records into a public database, scrolling through endless listings until one name jumped out at me. Hart, Julian and Thompson, Maya joint property ownership. A lake house, purchased 2 years ago. 2 years ago. While I was still crying myself to sleep. I felt the floor tilt beneath me as the pieces rearranged themselves into a new, uglier picture. They hadn't just started. This wasn't new. This wasn't sudden. This had been planned. And just when I thought the night couldn't hold another blow, my phone lit up again. This time, the unknown number. If you talk to Maya, don't believe a word she says. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed, my pulse racing, my breath shallow. Who was warning me? Who knew enough to interfere, but not enough to stop this? I didn't know it yet, but the next time I saw Maya face to face, I'd get my first real glimpse of the truth. And it wouldn't just hurt, it would shatter me. I didn't plan to confront her. I told myself I'd wait, gather more proof, be strategic. But that illusion shattered the second I saw her. I'd stopped by a cafe downtown to clear my head, one of those quiet little places where the hum of soft jazz and the smell of fresh espresso usually calmed me. And there she was. Maya, sitting at the corner table. Alone. She was scrolling through her phone, a half-finished latte in front of her, the sapphire ring catching the sunlight like a deliberate taunt. My sapphire ring. Before I could think, before I could breathe, my feet moved on their own. Maya! Her head snapped up, eyes widening for a fraction of a second before she smiled. Too quickly, too perfectly. Liv! She said brightly, like nothing had ever happened. Wow, what are the chances? I stared at her hand, resting casually on the table, the sapphire flashing with every small movement. That's my grandmother's ring, I said flatly. Her smile didn't falter, but something in her gaze shifted. Actually, she said smoothly, twisting the ring like she was showing it off, it was a gift. From Julian. Evan. I clenched my fist so hard my nails dug into my palms. Maya, I said, my voice low, where did he get it? She hesitated. Just barely. But I saw it. The tiniest flicker of panic before her expression reset into something soft and pitying. Liv, I think we need to talk, she said gently, like she was the one comforting me. There's a lot you don't know, I laughed bitterly. You mean like how my fiancé disappeared without a word and somehow ended up as your future husband? She flinched, finally, the mask slipping. I didn't plan this, she said quickly. I swear, things happened. You wouldn't understand, make me, I snapped. For a second, I thought she might. But then her phone buzzed, and she glanced down, her entire face shifting when she saw the name. I caught it before she could hide it. Julian! She stood abruptly, grabbing her bag. Not here, she whispered, leaning close enough for her perfume to burn my throat. If you want the truth, come to the lake house tomorrow night, 7 sharp. No one else. I stared at her, stunned. Why there? She hesitated again, eyes darting to the cafe window, scanning the street like she was afraid someone was watching. Because, she said finally, voice barely above a whisper, this isn't safe to talk about anywhere else. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She pressed her lips together, turned and walked out, heels clicking against the tile. I stood there, gripping my coffee cup so hard it cracked, the ring burning in my memory like a brand. That night, I couldn't stop replaying the encounter. Her expression when I mentioned the ring, her panic at the cafe, her choice of words, and above all, the lake house. The same lake house she and Evan, Julian, had bought 2 years ago. While I was still mourning him, while she was still texting me about moving on, I checked the property listing again online, zooming in on the aerial photos. A secluded estate, deep in the woods. No neighbors for miles. Private dock. Gated road. A perfect place for secrets. As I sat there in the dark, my phone buzzed again. This time, the unknown number. "Don't go to the lake house." My breath caught in my throat. I typed back instantly. "Why not?" No reply. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, the silence louder than any warning. I should have listened. I should have walked away. But I couldn't, because Maya was right about one thing. There was a lot I didn't know, and by this point, not knowing hurt worse than the truth ever could. The next evening, at 7 sharp, I'd be at that lake house, and that's when I'd finally learn what happened the night Evan disappeared. But I didn't realize. The truth wouldn't save me. It would destroy me. The next day moved in slow motion, every hour stretched thin with anticipation and dread. I couldn't focus on work. I couldn't eat. I couldn't even breathe without thinking about the lake house. By 6:30, I was already driving. The road wound deeper and deeper into the woods, sunlight bleeding through the branches like fractured glass. My hands clutched the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles were pale. I kept replaying Maya's voice in my head. "If you want the truth, come to the lake house." 7 sharp. Just as I turned onto the long, narrow road leading to the estate, my phone buzzed violently on the passenger seat. The unknown number. Unknown. "Don't go in. Turn around. Please." My chest tightened. I slowed the car, glancing at the towering gates ahead. Another message came seconds later. "Liv, I'm begging you. It's not safe." I gripped the phone, staring at the words, my pulse pounding in my ears. Not safe. The thought echoed inside my head, but I pushed it aside and kept driving. Because whatever danger waited beyond those gates, not knowing the truth felt worse. The gate was already open when I arrived. I parked by the edge of the gravel driveway, the lake glimmering faintly behind the trees. The house loomed ahead of me, sleek, modern, cold. Every window reflected the fading sunset like blank, accusing eyes. I climbed the steps slowly, my breath shallow, my hand hovering near the doorknob. Before I could knock, the door opened. And there she was. Maya. She looked different. Not polished and perfect, like she'd been at the cafe. Her makeup was lighter, her shoulders tense, her fingers trembling slightly as she stepped aside to let me in. "Liv," she whispered. "You came." "You asked me to," I said flatly, stepping past her into the living room. The house was immaculate, not a cushion out of place, not a speck of dust anywhere. But it didn't feel lived in. It felt staged, like someone had set the scene for a performance. Maya shut the door softly and turned toward me, her eyes darting to the hallway behind her before she spoke. "You can't be here long," she said quickly. "He doesn't know I invited you." My stomach dropped. "He?" "Julian," she whispered, like even saying his name out loud might summon him. I folded my arms tightly, my voice sharp. "Evan." His name is Evan. Maya's eyes flickered, but she didn't deny it. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "Why, Maya? Why him? Why this?" She hesitated, biting her lip, and for the first time, I saw something in her expression that almost looked like regret. "It's complicated," she whispered. "You think you know what happened, but you don't." "Then explain it," I demanded. Before she could answer, a door creaked somewhere down the hall. Maya's entire body went rigid. "Go!" she hissed under her breath, pushing me toward the back entrance. "Go now, Liv." I froze, confused and angry. "You brought me here. I thought I could do this, but I can't," she whispered frantically. "Please. If he finds you here, it'll be worse." My pulse thundered as footsteps echoed from deeper inside the house. "Who's there?" A man's voice. Deep, calm, familiar. It felt like a punch to the chest. I turned just enough to catch a glimpse down the hallway. And there he was. Evan, or Julian, or whoever he'd become. 3 years. 3 years of silence, and here he was, alive and standing 10 feet away. His hair was shorter, his clothes sharper, but those eyes, those same eyes that used to look at me like I was his whole world. And now, they looked right past me like I was a strange Liv. he said finally, his voice low, unreadable. I swallowed hard, unable to form words. Maya stepped quickly between us. She was leaving, she said, her tone clipped, almost trembling. But his gaze stayed locked on me, and I could feel it like heat on my skin. You shouldn't be here, he said softly. There was no anger in his voice, only warning. I stumbled backward toward the door, my hands shaking, my breath ragged. Maya reached for my arm, but I pulled away. I deserve answers, I whispered, my voice barely steady. You owe me that much. For a long moment, he didn't move, didn't speak, didn't blink. And then he said something I wasn't prepared for. It's not what you think. I left before I could collapse under the weight of those words. By the time I reached my car, my legs were trembling so badly I could barely stand. As I pulled onto the main road, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I warned you! Now it begins. I didn't know it yet. But this wasn't the confrontation. This was the opening move. And the game Maya and Evan were playing? I wasn't ready for how dangerous it really was. The next few days blurred into one long, sleepless stretch of obsession. I couldn't stop replaying what happened at the lake house. Evan's face, Maya's trembling hands, that warning in his voice. It's not what you think. But if it wasn't, what was it? 3 nights later, I got an alert on my phone. A mutual friend had posted an Instagram story tagged at Lake Crest Manor. I tapped it instantly. Maya. Evan. The rehearsal dinner. They were standing side by side, laughing under fairy lights, champagne flutes clinking. Guests surrounded them, their smiles picture perfect. It looked like a dream. And something inside me snapped. By the next evening, I was there. Uninvited. I parked at the far edge of the gravel lot, slipping past the rows of cars until the soft hum of music grew louder. The venue glowed in warm amber lights, laughter drifting across the manicured gardens. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but I kept walking. Inside, the room was crowded with family and friends, all gathered around a long banquet table. And there they were. Maya, in a soft gold dress, looking like she was born to play the bride. Evan, Julian, beside her, his hand resting lightly at her back, just like he used to do with me. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself forward, weaving between guests until I stood near the bar, half hidden behind a floral arrangement. I just needed one moment, one glimpse of his expression when he saw me. It didn't take long. Maya turned first, her laughter freezing mid-sentence. Her eyes widened, lips parting as if to form my name, but she didn't speak. Evan followed her gaze, and when his eyes met mine, everything stopped. The music, the voices, the air itself seemed to thin until I couldn't breathe. He stood slowly, his expression unreadable. But Maya reacted first. She whispered something to him and crossed the room with measured steps, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. Liv, she said smoothly, her voice low but razor sharp. What are you doing here? I came to see him, I said, keeping my voice steady even though my heart was hammering. Her jaw tightened, though her smile didn't slip. You need to leave. I glanced at Evan, hoping, no, praying for something in his face, some sign of the man I used to know. But all he did was shake his head slowly, almost imperceptibly, like a silent warning. And that hurt more than anything he could have said aloud. I should have walked away. But instead, I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. Do you sleep well at night, Maya? I asked softly, knowing what you did. For the first time, her composure cracked. A flicker of something sharp, anger, guilt, fear, flashed in her eyes, before she leaned close enough that her breath warmed my ear. You were always a dress rehearsal, she whispered. Then she smiled sweetly, like she'd just paid me a compliment. The words burned through me like acid. Every muscle in my body screamed to slap her, scream at her, do something. But before I could react, a hand touched my shoulder. Security. Ma'am, you'll need to come with me. I glanced around, realizing too late that all eyes were on me. the uninvited guest at the center of their perfect evening. Humiliation burned hotter than my anger as I let them escort me out into the cool night air. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed. The unknown number. "You shouldn't have come." I stared at the screen, my vision blurring, tears stinging hot behind my eyes. Whoever they were, they'd been right from the beginning. But it didn't matter anymore. I was past the point of no return. Because the next morning, an anonymous email landed in my inbox. A single subject line, "You need to hear this." Inside was a link. A cloud folder filled with screenshots, audio files, and clipped voice messages. And when I opened the first recording, I froze. It was Maya's voice, low, sharp, calculated. Make her doubt herself. Make her question everything. If she trusts you less, we win. I didn't know it yet, but that folder was about to unravel everything I thought I knew. And for the first time, I would see just how deep this betrayal ran. I sat frozen on the couch, staring at the email on my laptop like it might detonate if I clicked the link. The subject line kept pulsing in my head. "You need to hear this." I hesitated for a full minute before I opened it. And then, I wished I hadn't. Inside the folder were dozens of files, audio clips, screenshots, even documents labeled with dates from 3 years ago. The year Evan disappeared. I clicked the first recording. Maya's voice. Calm, deliberate, almost sweet. "Make her doubt herself, Evan. You have to start now. Make her question every little thing. If she trusts you less, she'll stop confiding in you. And when she does, we win." My stomach dropped so hard, I thought I'd be sick. I replayed it 3 times, my hands trembling on the trackpad, hoping, praying, I'd misheard. But no, it was her voice. It was Maya. The next file was a screen recording of text. Maya to Evan. Maya. "You're doing great. Just a few more weeks. She'll break before the wedding, Evan. I hate this." Maya. "You want out of the mess, right?" Trust me. This is the only way. I slammed the laptop shut, my breath coming in short, uneven gasps. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, the silence deafening. I grabbed my phone and called the unknown number that had been warning me all along. It rang twice, then clicked. Silence. "Hello?" I whispered, my voice raw. Nothing. "I have the files," I said. "I know what she did." "Who are you?" Finally, a voice on the other end, distorted, low, almost mechanical, spoke. "I told you not to trust her." "Who are you?" I demanded. But they hung up. I sat there for a long time, the ringing still in my ears, before reopening the folder. I had to know everything. The next audio clip was different. It wasn't Maya this time, it was Evan. His voice cracked, shaky and hoarse. "I don't want to hurt her, Maya. She's done nothing wrong." Then Maya's reply, sharp as glass. "She's in the way. You want out of this. You follow the plan." I froze. The words burned into my chest like fire. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't fate. It wasn't 2 people falling in love after tragedy. This was premeditated. Evan didn't vanish because he was scared. He didn't leave me because of cold feet. He left me because Maya made him. I scrolled further, hands slick with sweat, and found something worse. Screenshots from Maya's messages to my mom. Maya. "She's fragile right now. Please don't mention Julian to her." Mom. "I won't. But are you sure this is best for her?" Maya. "Trust me. I know what's good for Liv." My chest tightened so hard it hurt to breathe. Even Mom. Even she'd been wrapped into this without realizing it. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark, numb. Somewhere outside, a car passed, headlights washing briefly over the walls before vanishing again, leaving me in silence. I thought about everything Maya had stolen from me. My fiancé, my ring, my future. And now, it turned out, she'd stolen something even deeper. My choices. She'd rewritten my entire life while I wasn't looking. The final file in the folder was a video. Shaky footage, recorded secretly from behind a half-closed door. Evan and Maya arguing. Evan. "She'll find out eventually." Maya. "Not if we're careful." Evan. She deserves the truth. Maya. The truth would ruin everything. For both of us, I shut the laptop so fast it almost snapped. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't sit still. I needed to see him. I needed to hear him say it to my face. So I sent one message to the unknown number. I'm going to him. Tonight, a reply came instantly. Don't. You're not ready. But it was too late for warnings. Because if Maya thought she could bury the past forever, I was ready to dig until my hands bled. And I wouldn't stop until I heard Evan admit the truth. I didn't know it yet, but what I'd find next wouldn't just expose their betrayal. It would uncover a secret bigger than both of them. I didn't sleep, not even for a second. By dawn, my body was running on nothing but adrenaline and stubbornness. I replayed the recordings over and over, the cold sharpness in Maya's voice, Evan's hesitation, the stolen bracelet, the sapphire ring. Every puzzle piece pointed to one conclusion. I'd been played. But I needed to hear it from him. I needed Evan, no, Julian, to look me in the eye and explain why. I waited until late afternoon and drove to the lake house again, this time parking 2 streets away and walking through the woods. The house was quiet, blinds drawn, the water behind it still and dark like a sheet of glass. I stood there for a long moment, breathing in the damp air, before knocking softly. Footsteps approached. The door opened just enough for one face to appear. Evan. For a second, neither of us spoke. Up close, he looked different now, sharper around the edges, harder somehow. But his eyes, those were the same hazel green I used to get lost in. He glanced over his shoulder before stepping aside. Come in, he whispered. I followed him into the living room, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. We stood facing each other, an entire lifetime between us. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Finally, he broke the silence. You shouldn't have come back here, he said softly. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. Funny, that's exactly what Maya keeps saying. His jaw tightened at her name, and for the first time, I saw it. The flicker of something raw beneath the polished surface. Regret. Evan, I whispered, the name tasting strange after so long. Why? He closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. When he opened them again, they were glassy, tired. It's complicated. Then uncomplicate it, I snapped. Start talking. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then, finally, he sank into the couch, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together like he was holding something fragile. Maya's family, he said quietly. They're powerful, Liv. More powerful than you realize, I frowned. Powerful how? He hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck before answering. They control investments. Real estate, businesses. They had leverage on me, on my company, on my family. I stared at him, unblinking. So they forced you to leave me? That's your excuse? His voice cracked as he whispered. They gave me no choice. I shook my head violently, stepping back. No choice? I hissed. You could have told me, Evan. We could have figured it out together. I couldn't, he said, louder this time, his voice thick with something between guilt and fear. If I'd told you anything, they would have come after you too. The words hung between us, heavy and impossible. Then why her? I demanded finally, my throat raw. Why Maya? He stared at me, silent. And in that silence, I got my answer. Not forced, not trapped. Chosen. I turned away, fighting the tears burning my eyes. You could have loved anyone else, I whispered. Anyone but her. She wasn't supposed to mean anything, he said softly. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. Well, I said, voice breaking, guess what? She means everything now. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the faint creak of the old house, the distant ripple of water outside. Finally, he stood, stepping closer, his voice low but steady. You don't understand yet, he said. Maya isn't who you think she is. I met his gaze, refusing to flinch. Oh, I think I understand her perfectly. No, he said firmly, shaking his head. You don't. And you need to be careful, Liv. She'll do whatever it takes to protect what's hers. I stared at him, heart pounding, trying to decide whether to scream, cry, or laugh. And then, suddenly, my phone buzzed. A message from the unknown number. He's lying. My breath caught, my grip tightening around the phone. I looked back up at Evan, his face pale, his hands curling into fists. He'd seen the message. I didn't know who to believe anymore. Evan. Maya. The mysterious stranger behind the warnings. But one thing was clear. I'd just stepped into something far bigger than betrayal, and whatever truth they were hiding, someone was willing to destroy me to keep it buried. I didn't remember driving home. I didn't remember walking through my front door, or kicking off my shoes, or sitting on the living room floor. But I do remember the silence. That heavy, crushing kind of silence that makes you hyper-aware of your own heartbeat. Evan's words kept replaying in my head. Maya's family, leverage, no choice. And then the text from the unknown number burned across my mind. He's lying. Who was I supposed to believe anymore? By midnight, I was sitting on the carpet surrounded by stacks of photos, old letters, and scattered memories. My life with Evan, or Julian, or whoever he really was, had turned into an unsolvable puzzle. I thought about everything I'd learned. The cropped tattoo, the missing sapphire ring, the secret engagement photos, the cold warnings. And then my gaze landed on something I hadn't touched in years. The wooden box. It sat on the bottom shelf of my closet, dusty and forgotten, the brass clasp tarnished with time. I pulled it out and flipped the lid open. Inside were keepsakes from the life I thought I had. Ticket stubs from concerts we went to. A napkin with "I love you" scribbled on it in his handwriting. And letters. Dozens of them. One envelope was sealed, untouched, buried beneath the rest. I frowned, picking it up. The handwriting wasn't Evan's. It was Maya's. My chest tightened as I carefully tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded once. Liv, if you're reading this, it means everything's gone the way it was supposed to. I froze. I know you think I betrayed you, but there are things you don't understand yet. Things you're not ready to know. When you are, you'll realize why it had to happen this way. No signature, no date, just that. My hands shook as I set the letter down, my pulse racing. She'd planted this. She'd known I'd find it eventually. And she wanted me to wait. But I wasn't waiting anymore. The next morning, an ornate black box arrived on my doorstep. No return address. Inside was an engraved silver pen, an invitation to the wedding, and a folded card with a single handwritten line. If you want answers, bring the letter. My phone buzzed again. The unknown number. Don't do it. Whatever you think you'll find there, it's worse. I typed back furiously, my thumbs shaking. Who are you? A pause. Someone who lost everything because of them. Don't make the same mistake I did. I sat on the floor, the box open in front of me, the letter clenched in my fist. I was caught in a web I couldn't see, and every thread led back to the same place. Maya. The wedding. The secrets hiding behind those perfect smiles. By that afternoon, I made my decision. I wrapped the letter carefully in tissue, tucked it inside a velvet pouch, and slid it into a gift bag addressed to Maya and Julian. But this wasn't a present. It was a message. I wanted her to know. I wasn't going to run. I wasn't going to hide. And if this was a game, I was done playing by her rules. I didn't know it yet, but the wedding wasn't just a celebration. It was a trap, and I was walking straight into it. The wedding day came faster than I expected. Too fast. I woke up before sunrise, my body humming with anxiety, my chest tight as though my ribs were wrapped in wire. I'd told myself I wasn't going, that I'd stay far away and watch the chaos burn from a safe distance. But by noon, I was dressed, keys in hand, and driving to Lake Crest Manor. When I arrived, the estate looked like something out of a magazine spread. The gardens were immaculate, lined with hundreds of white roses. Strings of lights crisscrossed above the outdoor aisle, glowing softly even in the afternoon sun. Guests in satin and silk drifted through the grounds, sipping champagne and laughing like they were floating through someone else's dream. I wasn't invited. I didn't care. I tucked myself into the back corner of the ceremony, hidden behind a marble column where the shadows fell thick and forgiving. And then I saw them. Maya. Evan. She stood at the altar in a gown made of silk and secrets, her veil glittering like frost under the sunlight. Evan, no, Julian, stood beside her in a charcoal suit, hands clasped tightly in front of him, his jaw tense, his expression unreadable. The music began, soft and slow, the kind of melody meant to make hearts melt, and mine did, but not from love, from fury. The officiant began the vows, asking them to repeat after him. Maya went first, her voice steady, sweet, perfectly rehearsed. Every word dripped with sincerity, with romance, with poetry, until my stomach dropped, because I knew those words. They weren't hers. They were mine. The lines she recited, the promises, the metaphors, the gentle phrases about storms and shelter and unshakable love. I'd written them 3 years ago. I remembered sitting cross-legged on Maya's living room floor, laptop balanced on my knees, reading the draft aloud while she sipped wine and nodded thoughtfully. "You're so good at this," she'd said back then. "Let me help you tweak the flow." She'd saved them. She'd stolen them. And now, she was using my vows to marry the man I once thought would be mine. I pressed my back against the cold stone column, fists clenched, breath shaky, tears blurring my vision. When the officiant turned to Evan, I leaned forward instinctively, desperate for something, anything in his voice that would give me answers. But his vows were short, almost mechanical. He didn't look at Maya the way he used to look at me. He didn't look at her at all. That's when I noticed it, the way his shoulders tensed every time she touched him. He wasn't nervous. He was trapped. The ceremony ended in applause, cheers filling the garden as confetti fluttered down around them. Maya and Evan walked back up the aisle, hand in hand, smiling for the cameras. But I caught the moment the smiles faded. When no one was looking, Evan leaned down and whispered something into Maya's ear. Her grip tightened on his arm like a vice, and her expression shifted from joy to steel. It lasted less than a second, but it was enough. Something was wrong. I turned to leave before anyone could spot me, but I didn't make it past the gates before my phone buzzed. A new message. Same unknown number. "Leave!" Now my pulse spiked. I typed back quickly. "Not until I know the truth." This time, the reply came instantly. "Then brace yourself. You won't like what you find." I shoved the phone into my pocket and walked back toward the venue, blending into the crowd headed for the reception tent. If Maya thought she could humiliate me in silence, she was wrong. I wasn't running anymore, because someone here knew what really happened the night Evan vanished. And I was about to find them. What I didn't realize yet was that I wouldn't need to search for the truth. It was going to find me first. And when it did, I'd wish I'd never come. The reception tent was glowing like a lantern against the evening sky, golden light spilling through the silk canopy, laughter floating across the manicured gardens. I slipped inside unnoticed, blending into the sea of sequins and tuxedos. A string quartet played something soft and elegant, while waiters glided between tables with trays of champagne. Everyone looked beautiful. Everyone looked happy. Everyone looked like they belonged. Except me. I stood in the far corner, hidden behind a column draped in white orchids, my fingers clenched tightly around the small velvet pouch holding Maya's letter, the one she'd left in my box years ago. I thought about giving it back to her, right here, in front of everyone. A quiet declaration, I know everything. But then I saw them, Maya and Evan. They were dancing at the center of the floor, cameras flashing around them, their smiles blindingly perfect. To everyone else, they looked like the picture of love. But I saw something no one else seemed to notice. Evan's hand on her waist was rigid. His smile didn't reach his eyes. And when she leaned in to whisper something in his ear, his jaw clenched so hard it looked painful. I stepped closer to the dance floor, moving through the crowd, until I stood just outside the circle of clapping guests. That's when Maya spotted me. Her eyes locked on mine, and for a split second, her smile faltered. Barely, but enough for me to see it. Then, just as quickly, she turned it back on, brighter than before, as though daring me to cause a scene. I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I slipped out to the terrace for air, my chest tight and my thoughts tangled. That's when my phone buzzed. A new message, same unknown number. Stop watching them. Come to the West Wing hallway. Now my stomach dropped. I glanced back toward the reception tent, lights glowing warm and soft behind the glass. Then to my left, where a shadowed corridor stretched into silence. I shouldn't go. Every part of me screamed that I shouldn't. But my feet moved anyway. The West Wing hallway was deserted, the muffled music fading behind me as I stepped deeper into the quiet. Dim sconces lined the walls, their light pooling faintly on polished marble floors. Halfway down the corridor, I stopped. A figure leaned against the far wall, partially hidden in shadow. It wasn't Evan. It wasn't Maya. It was her. Maya's older sister, Claire. She stepped forward, her expression tight, scanning the hallway before speaking in a sharp whisper. "You need to leave," she said urgently. I blinked, confused. "What?" "You shouldn't be here, Liv," Claire said, glancing back over her shoulder like she expected someone to appear at any moment. "If you stay, you'll regret it." I stared at her, words caught in my throat. "Why?" "What's going on?" Claire hesitated, her gaze softening briefly. "You think this is about love," she said finally. "It's not." Before I could respond, footsteps echoed from the far end of the hallway. Claire stiffened, stepping back into the shadows. Maya appeared seconds later, her veil draped over one shoulder, a glass of champagne in her hand, and a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Well," she said softly, tilting her head. "Enjoying the party, Liv?" Her eyes flicked briefly to Claire, who lowered her gaze instantly, retreating like a scolded child. "Leave us," Maya said coolly. Claire hesitated, then glanced at me one last time before disappearing down the hall. The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. "You shouldn't be here," Maya said finally, her voice low and cold. "You weren't invited." I held her gaze, refusing to flinch. "You stole my life," I whispered. Her smile didn't falter. "Oh, Liv," she said softly, almost pitying. "You keep thinking this is about you." I stepped closer, my hands shaking. "Then what is it about?" Maya's smile widened just slightly, but her eyes were hard, unyielding. "Ask Evan," she murmured, "if he tells you the truth." Before I could respond, she turned and walked away, heels clicking against marble, leaving me standing alone in the dim hallway. My phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. "Get out now." She knows I shoved the phone into my pocket, my breath coming fast, my thoughts spiraling. Because in that moment, I understood something I hadn't before. This wasn't just betrayal. This wasn't just heartbreak. There was a game being played here, and Maya wasn't just winning it. She was running it. I didn't know it yet, but by the time the night ended, someone would leave Lake Crest Manor broken, and I had no idea if it would be me. I left the hallway shaking. Not from fear. At least, not just fear. It was something heavier, something colder, something that settled in my bones like frost. The reception carried on behind me, muffled laughter and clinking glasses drifting faintly through the walls, as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed. Maya's words echoed in my head like a drumbeat. "Ask Evan, if he tells you the truth." I found myself outside, standing beneath the string lights that lined the terrace, the cool night air biting my skin. Evan was there too, alone. He leaned against the railing overlooking the lake, his tie loosened, a glass of untouched champagne in his hand. For a long moment, I just watched him. The man who'd once been my everything, and now, I didn't even know who he was anymore. Finally, I stepped forward. "Evan." He stiffened at the sound of his name, but didn't turn around. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly. "That's what everyone keeps telling me," I replied, my voice trembling. "But no one tells me why." Silence. "Did you love me?" I asked finally, my throat tight, the words barely a whisper. He closed his eyes, his shoulders rising with a deep, shuddering breath. "I still do," he said quietly. My chest constricted, my breath catching painfully. It wasn't the answer I wanted, not anymore. I stepped closer, my voice sharp now. "Then why am I standing here watching you marry her?" He turned to face me, his expression shadowed by something deeper than regret. "I made a choice," he said. "You mean she made it for you?" I shot back. Evan hesitated, jaw tightening, and for the first time, I saw it, the flash of something dark in his eyes. "She gave me no choice, Liv," he whispered. "You don't know what she's capable of." I stared at him, numb. "You could have told me," I said quietly. "You could have trusted me." His gaze dropped to the ground. "I couldn't," he said. "I wouldn't put you in danger." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "You put me in danger the moment you lied to me." "You left me defenseless, Evan. You left me with her." He flinched, but said nothing. Behind us, laughter and applause erupted from the reception tent. A perfect wedding, a perfect night, a perfect lie. And I finally understood. There would never be answers, not real ones, not from him, not from her. Whatever game they were playing, whatever secrets bound them together, I was never meant to know. I turned to leave, the sound of my heels sharp against the stone. He called after me once. "Liv!" I stopped just for a moment, but didn't look back. "Don't come looking for me again," he said softly. For your sake, I walked away without another word. Back at my car, the velvet pouch sat on the passenger seat. The letter Maya wrote years ago, the one that promised I'd understand when I was ready. I almost threw it into the lake. Almost. But instead, I slipped it into the glove compartment and shut it tight. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't over. The wedding lights faded behind me as I drove away, swallowed by the darkness of the road ahead. Some endings aren't clean. Some doors stay closed, no matter how desperately you pound on them. And sometimes, you never get the truth. But you survive anyway. If you've stayed with me until the end, maybe your heart has felt something too. Leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe. Only if you want to keep sharing stories like this with me.